I'd like to welcome to our MOOC Nitzan Yudan. Nitzan is the CEO and founder of Flat Club, a London-based business that rents flats, apartments, as they call them in some other places, to people who need them on a short-term basis. So Nitzan, welcome. Fantastic to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
So wasn't this market already saturated? There are lots of ways you can rent a place to stay online.
Yeah, so we found a Flat Lab 5 years ago. And back then, it was not as saturated, and I'm talking about the holiday type of stays. But what happened next is a lot of new competitors came in the market with a lot of money. So we had to stop and say...
Like Airbnb?
Like Airbnb, like Priceline who entered the market, like Expedia, HomeAway. HomeAway were in the market but changed their model. And we had to stop and say, okay, we don't have 100 million. All the competitors have more than that. How are we going to compete? And by then, we started to look better in what actually we have, what is special in our business, how our customers are using our product, and we identified an opportunity to slightly change what we are doing and move away from holiday rentals to what we call medium-term stays, which are stays of a few months, where the people are looking for a solution on a budget that will be similar to the long-term prices, long-term rentals. And by focusing on that, we realized that there is a huge market that is underserved, and we decided to focus on it and managed to grow it and grow in it very fast.
So that sounds like a classical pivot in today's entrepreneurial lexicon. How did you know that you had to pivot?
So, well, the warning was really to see what competitors are doing and understanding that what we thought is going to be our unique differentiator is not enough. And definitely not enough with the amount of money we had needed in order to be competitive. So we decided to just, as I said, talk with our customers. That was the best sign. And we asked our customer, hey, there are other providers with much more money, better selection, and nicer website. Why are you using us? And from the answers, we learned a lot. We learned back then our average stay was 16 nights. Which was interesting because the average stay...
16, 1.6 or 6.0?
1.6. Because the average stay on platform, on Airbnb, for example, is 5 nights.
Right.
So we thought, maybe there is something there. And as many times, when you look on the average, it means nothing. Basically, we realized there are two groups who are using our site. One group was using it as holiday stay, like on Airbnb, and the other group was using it for around 3 to 6 months. And when we talked to the group that was using it for holiday, we realized that it's almost random, the reason they use us, right? There's nothing stickiness. There's no reason for them to use us and not Airbnb, or very, very few reasons. So we decided we're not sure we can actually win this for the long term. But when we talked to those who were looking for a few months, their answers were shocking. They were telling us we had no other options. We use your product. We know it's not the most beautiful. We know it's not the best, but it's the only. That's why we use it. So in that aspect, we decided, all right, maybe the opportunity is here. Let's try to better understand who else is using, who needs accommodation for a few months. How do we get to the source of these customers, and how we actually go on focusing on these type of stays.
So let's go back to the very beginning. You began this business without going to any angels, no VC. You said, I'm going to do this entirely on a bootstrapped and customer-funded basis. Could you talk us through how that worked in the first several months?
Yeah, I was very lucky to launch the business while I was still a student at London Business School, which provided me a very good safety net. I could still go to corporate when I graduate, and I can spend my second year, which is quite laid back, in building a business. And that's exactly what I did. I said, if I want one day to go and raise money from investors, I need a few things. First, I need to be sales. I need to be super sure of what I'm doing so I can actually make investors go and invest and trust me. And for me to be 100% sure, I wanted to see traction first. So I'm looking at myself as the first investor. And I had to convince myself first that this is actually viable business, that we can actually get customers to use it, pay us money, and then I knew we'll be in a better position to go and talk and invest with investors. Not only because of valuation, but also because we're going to know the market better. We're going to have answers to questions that will come. And that's why we started with that. on a very, very low budget, very lean, to try and see how we can get customers to use our product, to pay, so we can focus on our customers. The second main reason to do that is that fundraising takes time, a lot of time. When I'm doing rounds of fundraising, I spend sometimes 60, 80 hours a week on fundraising, and there's still a business to run.
And there is a business to run on the side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's very, very challenging. So it's almost impossible to do both. So I wanted to make sure that I'm actually focusing on proving that there is a business before
First.
Exactly.
Yeah. So did you know how to write code and build a website
I
when
could
you
do
started?
basic, but what we did was more than basic. So we outsourced for a developer that helped us to build the initial.
So
code.
you needed a little bit of cash to pay a developer to do stuff. Where did that come from?
Personal savings, but to be
Okay,
honest, it
but
was small amount
small number.
comparing to the tuition fees I paid to LBS.
Right. Okay, so then you got an initial website built, and you began to get a little bit of traction.
Yeah.
And when did you get paid? What was your model to get paid by your customers?
We were getting paid when a booking was made. So when a payment was done on the platform between a guest who found accommodation, who booked accommodation online. We were getting a fee out of this payment.
And you got that fee, and then when did the person with the flat get paid? Did they get paid by you, or did they get
Yes,
paid?
they get paid by us. So we process all the payments. The guest is paying only to Flat Club, and Flat Club pays to the host 3 days after the guest moves in.
After the guest moves in. But the
Yes.
guest may have booked a couple of months in advance sometimes.
Correct?
Who gets to hold that money for a couple of months?
Flat Club.
Flat Club.
Yeah.
So there's your cash to begin growing the business.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, how far did that process take you before you said, no, maybe I have enough traction and maybe I should raise some more capital?
Yes, so it took us about 6 months to initially do that and break even. And we were actually making enough money to hire the first employee. Everything was very lean, so it was not that hard to break even, but enough money to hire the first employee and start to grow that. So we were without funding, without proper seed funding for a bit more than a year.
Yeah. So when you went and then went out to raise your first seed funding, you already had paying customers. You had an inventory of flats people could rent. So how did the investment community, the angels you approached, how did they view that?
I think investors, they are looking for track record, right? When they invest in an entrepreneur. If you already sold 3 businesses for 100 million each, it's much easier to raise another round, right?
But you hadn't done that.
I hadn't done that. So I had to build the track record. And in that case, my track record was actually the fact that the business was already there. And the fundraising process is also, it's about building relationship. It's less about going and making like an amazing pitch and bam, collecting the money and going.
No, doesn't work that way.
So it takes exactly. It's a lot about building relationship. I got that from one of the investors I met. He says, I like to invest in lines, not in dots. I want to see progress. So a lot of the time, what I did was to come and ask for advice, which is always better than ask for money, and kind of saying, here is what we plan to do in the next 3 months. And then coming back, what do you think we should do in the next 3 months or 6 months to make it interesting for you to invest in? And then we would come back after a few, and then we could do it. And we're going to come back, ideally, even before the deadline, saying,
Look
we
what I
said we
did.
did it in 3 months. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's how we built the track record and proving that, yes, maybe the market will change, maybe we'll need to a little bit pivot, as you said, but the right team is in place.
Yeah, yeah. So in the early days, in a business like yours, you need 2 things. You need flats to rent, and you need renters that need flats. But there's a bit of a paradox here, isn't there? If you have a whole lot of flats and no renters, the flats probably aren't going to be very happy. But if you have a whole lot of renters and no flats, they won't come back. How did you solve that?